Maria owned a small diner in a quiet neighborhood. Times were hard, and she struggled to keep her restaurant open. One rainy evening, an elderly man walked in. Though her own bills were piling up, she saw the hunger in his eyes and served him a warm meal free of charge. The man ate quietly in the corner. When he finished, he left something on the table. It wasn't money, it was a simple note that would change Maria's life in ways she never imagined. Maria had owned her small diner for 5 years. It was a cozy place on a quiet street corner with just 8 tables and a small counter. The red and white checkered curtains were faded, but she kept everything spotlessly clean. Every morning, she woke up at 4 a.m. to prepare the food. She made everything from scratch, using recipes her grandmother taught her. The smell of fresh bread and soup filled the tiny kitchen as she worked alone to save money on staff. Business had been slow lately. Maria looked at her bills spread across the counter after closing time. Her hands trembled as she counted the day's earnings. It wasn't enough for next month's rent. She thought about her 2 children at home. Tommy was 12, and Sophia was 9. They needed new school supplies, but she couldn't afford them. Maria wiped her eyes and kept counting the money again, hoping she had made a mistake. The weather forecast showed rain all week. Rainy days meant fewer customers. Maria sat in her empty diner, wondering if she should sell her wedding ring. Her late husband would understand, the children needed to eat. That evening, the rain poured heavily outside. The streetlights cast long shadows through the diner windows. Maria was about to close early when she heard the bell above the door ring. An old man walked in, his clothes soaked from the rain. He stood quietly by the door, water dripping onto the floor. His gray hair was messy, and his coat had holes in it, but there was something gentle about his eyes. Maria noticed how thin he looked. His hands shook slightly as he held on to his worn hat. Maria walked up to the old man with a warm smile. She could see he was embarrassed about his wet clothes dripping on her clean floor. She grabbed a clean towel from behind the counter and handed it to him. "I haven't eaten in 3 days," the man said softly, his voice trembling. "I lost my job last month and spent my last dollars on medicine." His eyes looked down at the floor. "I have no money for food." Maria remembered her first year in America. She had gone to bed hungry many nights, saving every penny for her children's food. The memory of that hunger was still fresh in her mind. She guided the old man to a corner table. "Don't worry about money today," she told him. The man tried to refuse, but Maria was already walking to the kitchen. She turned the stove back on and started cooking. She wanted to give him something special, something that would warm his body and soul. She made her grandmother's chicken soup. The recipe she saved for her own family. The vegetables were fresh, and she added extra chicken. The soup simmered as she baked a fresh batch of bread. The warm smell filled the empty diner. While cooking, Maria thought about her own father. He had passed away 10 years ago. This old man reminded her of him, the same kind eyes and gentle voice. She wondered if her father had ever gone hungry without telling anyone. The old man sat quietly, watching the rain outside. Maria noticed he kept wiping tears from his eyes. She pretended not to see, wanting to protect his dignity. She knew how hard it was to accept help sometimes. When the soup was ready, Maria added a generous portion of bread on the side. She also packed some extra bread and cookies in a paper bag. Tomorrow might be another hungry day for him, she thought. She couldn't let that happen. She served him the meal with the same care she would show her own father. The man stared at the steam rising from the bowl. The portion was big enough for 2 people, but Maria knew he needed it. His hands were shaking as he picked up the spoon. The old man took his first spoonful of soup. A tear rolled down his cheek as he tasted it. This reminds me of my mother's cooking from long ago," he told Maria, his voice soft. He began sharing memories of family dinners from his childhood. Maria sat with him while he ate. The diner was empty anyway, and something told her he needed company more than food. He introduced himself. "My name's Robert," he said. "I used to be an accountant before the company downsized last month." Robert ate slowly, savoring every spoonful. I worked at the same company for 30 years, he said. When they let me go, they only gave me 2 weeks' pay. His voice grew heavier. My savings went to medical bills after my wife passed away last year. Maria listened and nodded. She shared some of her own story, too. I came to America, lost my husband, and raised 2 children alone, she said. She told him about her dreams for the diner, her voice getting quieter as she mentioned her current struggles. Robert finished his meal and sat back with a content sigh. Color had returned to his face. He looked different now, more alive. He reached into his worn coat pocket and pulled out a small notepad. His hands were steady now as he wrote something. Maria started clearing his plates. Keep the paper bag with the extra food, she told him. Robert smiled. Thank you. No one has shown me such kindness in years, he said, his eyes sparkling as he looked around the diner one last time. When Robert stood up to leave, he placed a folded note on the table. Maria tried to stop him. You don't need to leave anything, she said. But he just smiled and walked to the door. The rain had stopped now. He turned and gave her one last look before leaving. Maria watched him disappear into the night. She walked over to his table, expecting to find a thank you note. What she found instead made her sit down in shock. Her hands trembled as she read the words on the paper. The note was written in neat handwriting. At first, Maria thought her eyes were playing tricks on her. She read it again and again. Each time, her heart beat faster. She couldn't believe what she was seeing. The note wasn't just a thank you message, it was a business card and a handwritten letter. Robert wasn't just any accountant. He had been the chief financial advisor for one of the city's largest restaurant chains. The company that let him go was a major investment firm. The letter explained. I have been watching your diner for weeks. I saw how you treat every customer like family. I noticed your dedication to quality food. I've been looking for someone exactly like you, someone with both skill and heart. I have powerful friends in the restaurant business. I promise to return tomorrow with investors. I see potential in your little diner. Your kindness tonight proved you're the kind of person we want to work with. Maria's hands shook as she read the part about his connections. He mentioned names she had seen in business magazines, people who owned restaurant chains across the country. She could hardly believe they would be interested in her small diner. She stayed up late that night, cleaning everything again. Her mind was racing. Could this really be happening? She thought about her children, about finally being able to buy them new clothes, about paying off her debts, about expanding her diner. The next morning, Maria arrived earlier than usual. She made fresh coffee and baked extra bread. Her heart jumped at every sound of the door opening. Each customer made her wonder if they were the investors Robert mentioned. Around lunchtime, a group of people in business suits walked in. Robert was with them, looking completely different. His clothes were expensive now. He stood tall and confident, but his kind eyes were the same. He smiled at Maria like they shared a secret. The investors sat at several tables and ordered different items from her menu. This looks amazing, one of them said, glancing at the menu. Maria's hands trembled as she cooked, but she put all her love into each dish. She remembered her grandmother saying, food made with love always tastes better. They stayed for 2 hours, talking quietly among themselves. Maria saw them nodding as they tasted her food. Robert walked around the diner, showing them the space. This is where the magic happens, he said, gesturing at the walls and windows. The investors took notes and made phone calls. Before leaving, they gathered around Maria's counter. We want to invest in your diner, one of them said. Our plan will keep everything you love about your restaurant but help it grow. We'd like to open 5 more locations across the city. The changes started happening quickly. They hired more staff so Maria didn't have to work alone anymore. They kept all her recipes exactly the same. Your grandmother's chicken soup will be our signature dish, one investor told her. It's the heart of the business. Within 6 months, Maria's diner transformed. They expanded into the empty store next door. The checkered curtains stayed, but everything else got a gentle update. Regular customers still came every day, happy to see that the food and service remained the same. Robert became Maria's business advisor. He helped her understand the finances and contracts. He never mentioned that night in the rain, but sometimes, when he ate her soup, she caught him smiling with the same look he had on that first evening. Maria could finally buy her children new school supplies. She moved them to a better apartment closer to school. Tommy and Sophia were proud of their mom. They helped at the diner on weekends, learning the recipes just like Maria had learned from her grandmother. 1 year later, all 5 new locations were open. Each one had the same checkered curtains and warm feeling. Maria trained every cook personally, teaching them her grandmother's recipes. Remember, she told them, every customer should feel like family. The best part was hiring people who needed help. Maria remembered her own struggles. She gave jobs to single parents and students. She made sure everyone had enough to eat. No one leaves hungry, she told her staff, even if they can't pay. Robert still came by for soup every week. Your kindness that rainy night wasn't just about the food, he told Maria. It was about dignity, about treating people with respect. That's what makes you special. That's what makes your restaurant successful. Maria kept the note Robert left that night. She framed it and hung it in her office. It reminded her that kindness can change lives in unexpected ways. Sometimes, when she looked at it, she thought about how one small act of compassion had transformed not just her life but the lives of so many others. The framed note in Maria's office became more than just a keepsake, it was a symbol of hope and a reminder of the power of compassion. Every time she glanced at it, she felt a renewed sense of purpose. It reminded her of how far she had come and how one simple meal had set off a chain reaction that changed her life and the lives of many others. As Maria's diner chain grew, so did her ability to give back to the community. She started a program called Plates of Hope, where 1 free meal was provided to a person in need for every 10 meals sold. This program resonated with her customers, many of whom began to support her efforts by donating money or volunteering their time. The program expanded rapidly, and soon, Maria's diners became known not just for their delicious food but also for their generosity. Maria began hosting community events, such as free cooking classes for single parents and struggling families. These classes weren't just about food. They were about teaching people self-reliance and the joy of preparing meals for their loved ones. She also partnered with local shelters and food banks, ensuring that no food went to waste and that those in need had access to warm, nourishing meals. Her 2 children, Tommy and Sophia, were deeply inspired by their mother's work. Tommy, now a teenager, often volunteered at the diner and at community events. He was learning not just the family recipes but also the values his mother cherished so deeply. Sophia, who had inherited Maria's knack for cooking, began experimenting with new recipes and dreaming about the day she could open her own diner. Despite her busy schedule, Maria made sure to spend quality time with her children. They often sat together in the evenings, laughing and sharing stories about their day. It was during one of these evenings that Tommy asked, "Mom, what made you decide to help Robert that night?" Maria paused for a moment and smiled. "It wasn't a decision, Tommy. It was just the right thing to do. When you see someone in need, you help. That's how we build a better world, one small act at a time." As the years went by, Maria's diners became landmarks in the city, cherished not just for their food but for the warmth and kindness they represented. Robert continued to play a pivotal role in Maria's life and business. He often visited her diners, always ordering the chicken soup that had first brought them together. He also became a mentor to Tommy and Sophia, sharing his knowledge of finance and business to prepare them for the future. Robert's story became a source of inspiration for many. Maria eventually convinced him to share his experiences with her staff and the wider community. His talks focused on resilience, gratitude, and the power of human connection. "We all have the power to change someone's life," he would say. And sometimes, in doing so, we change our own. Maria's story attracted attention beyond her local community. Articles were written about her diners and the unique way she blended business with compassion. She was invited to speak at conferences and share her philosophy on leadership and kindness. Despite her growing fame, Maria remained humble and focused on her work. To her, the diners weren't just businesses, they were her way of giving back to the world. As her success grew, so did her ability to support causes close to her heart. Maria established a foundation to help struggling single parents, inspired by her own journey. The foundation provided grants for education, childcare, and housing, giving families the support they needed to build better lives. She also funded scholarships for culinary students, ensuring that the next generation of chefs would carry forward the values of love and care in their cooking. Through it all, Maria never forgot her roots. She continued to work in her original diner, greeting customers with the same warm smile she had given Robert that rainy night. Her staff often joked that she could never fully retire because her heart was too deeply intertwined with the diners and the people they served. One day, as Maria was closing up her first diner, she found herself alone in the quiet space. She walked over to the framed note in her office and read it once more. The words still filled her with awe and gratitude. She thought about Robert, about her grandmother's recipes, and about the countless lives that had been touched because she had chosen kindness that night. Maria closed her eyes and whispered a quiet thank you to the universe. She knew that the story wasn't just about her, it was about all the people who had come together to make something beautiful. It was a story of hope, resilience, and the extraordinary power of compassion. Maria's journey continued to inspire people far and wide. Her diners became symbols of more than just great food, they stood for generosity, community, and second chances. Maria's ability to blend heart and business didn't go unnoticed. Entrepreneurs, nonprofit leaders, and even politicians sought her advice, wanting to replicate her success in fostering meaningful connections while running a profitable enterprise. As time went on, Maria's children grew into their own roles within the family legacy. Tommy, who had always admired his mother's resilience, decided to study business management. He had a vision to expand the diners even further, bringing their message of kindness to new cities and communities. Sophia, on the other hand, followed her love for cooking and studied culinary arts. She dreamed of creating new dishes while preserving the family's treasured recipes. Robert remained an integral part of their journey. Despite his own initial hardships, he had found a renewed sense of purpose in helping Maria and her family succeed. Over time, he became a grandfatherly figure to Tommy and Sophia, offering not just business wisdom but also life advice. "I may have lost a job," Robert would often say with a chuckle, "but I gained a family." Maria continued her work tirelessly. The diners were thriving, and her foundation was helping more people every year. Yet, she never lost sight of the importance of small acts of kindness. She made it a point to interact with her customers, often sharing a cup of coffee and listening to their stories. It reminded her of why she started this journey and grounded her amidst all the success. One day, an unexpected letter arrived at Maria's original diner. The envelope was simple, with no return address, but the handwriting was familiar. She opened it and found a note from someone who had heard her story. The letter read, "Dear Maria, your story reminded me that kindness can ripple across time and space. I was once like Robert, struggling and lost, until someone extended a helping hand. Seeing what you've built, how you've changed lives, gives me hope and reminds me that even the smallest gestures can matter. Please keep doing what you do, it's more than food, it's love in action. With gratitude. A stranger." Maria was deeply moved. She hung the letter in her office next to Robert's original note. It became a second reminder of the impact one person's compassion could have on the world. She shared the letter with her staff, encouraging them to see their work as more than just a job, it was a chance to make a difference. As the years passed, Maria's diners became cornerstones of their communities. They hosted holiday meals for the homeless, sponsored school events, and even became safe spaces where anyone could find comfort and warmth. Maria's philosophy spread like wildfire. Food wasn't just about sustenance, it was about connection and care. Tommy and Sophia eventually took over much of the business, freeing Maria to focus on her philanthropic efforts. They carried forward her values, ensuring that the diners stayed true to their roots even as they expanded to new locations. Maria's grandchildren often played in the diners, surrounded by the delicious smells and the laughter of customers who had become like family. In her later years, Maria took time to reflect on her incredible journey. She often revisited that rainy night when Robert first walked into her diner. She wondered what would have happened if she had turned him away. The thought always brought a lump to her throat, reminding her how one small decision can change the course of countless lives. One evening, as the sun set over her bustling diners, Maria sat quietly in the original one, sipping a cup of her grandmother's chicken soup. She looked around at the familiar checkered curtains, the warm lights, and the laughter of families enjoying their meals. It felt like home, not just for her but for everyone who walked through those doors. Maria's story had come full circle, but the legacy of her kindness continued to ripple outward. In every bowl of soup served, in every smile exchanged, and in every act of generosity inspired by her journey, Maria's message lived on, that even in the hardest times, kindness and compassion have the power to transform lives. Maria's legacy grew stronger with each passing year, extending far beyond her original diner. Her story became a beacon of hope, inspiring people around the world to act with kindness and courage in their own lives. Media outlets often featured her tale, and she became a sought-after speaker at events where she shared the simple yet profound lesson that had guided her journey: kindness costs nothing but can change everything. As her diners expanded to new cities, they maintained their unique charm and core values. Each location had the same checkered curtains, warm lighting, and family atmosphere that defined the original. The staff in every diner was trained not just in cooking but also in compassion, ensuring that the spirit of Maria's mission remained intact. Regular customers across the country came to know Maria's story and felt like a part of her extended family. One particularly memorable moment came when Maria was approached by a young chef who had been homeless just a few years prior. He told her, "Your program, Plates of Hope, gave me my first warm meal after weeks of struggling. It inspired me to turn my life around. I started cooking because I wanted to give others the same feeling of hope I got from your diner." Moved to tears, Maria hired him on the spot and mentored him personally. He later became the head chef at one of her busiest locations. The Plates of Hope program itself evolved into a nationwide initiative. Partnering with other restaurants and businesses, it expanded its reach to feed millions of people every year. The program not only provided meals but also connected individuals to resources like job training and housing support. It became a symbol of how a small act of kindness could grow into a movement that touched countless lives. Meanwhile, Maria's foundation continued to support single parents, students, and struggling families. The foundation offered scholarships, job placement services, and temporary housing assistance. Maria insisted on personally reviewing the stories of those who applied, wanting to ensure that the help was reaching those who needed it most. Each success story reminded her of her own struggles and the importance of paying it forward. Robert, who had become like a second father to Maria, remained a constant presence in her life. Though he had retired from his role as her business advisor, he often visited the diners to catch up with Maria and her family. He took great pride in watching Tommy and Sophia carry on the family legacy. "You've raised them well," he would often say with a smile. "They have your heart." Tommy and Sophia, now adults, continued to innovate and expand the business. They introduced sustainable practices in all the diners, from sourcing local ingredients to minimizing waste. They also launched an online platform to share their grandmother's recipes, allowing people from around the world to experience the love and care that defined Maria's cooking. Despite all the growth and success, Maria remained grounded. She still spent time at the original diner, welcoming customers with her signature warmth and making sure everything was running smoothly. She loved hearing the stories of her patrons, stories of triumph, struggle, and gratitude that reminded her of her own journey. One day, Maria received an invitation to attend a prestigious awards ceremony. She was being honored for her contributions to her community and her efforts to fight hunger. As she stood on stage to accept the award, she felt a wave of emotion. She thought about that rainy night so many years ago and how a simple act of kindness had brought her to this moment. In her acceptance speech, Maria said, "This honor is not mine alone. It belongs to everyone who has walked through the doors of our diners, to my family who believed in me, to the team that works tirelessly to carry out our mission, and to Robert, who taught me that even in the darkest times, there is light to be found." This is proof that one small act of kindness can create ripples that change the world. The audience gave her a standing ovation, and Maria left the stage feeling more inspired than ever to continue her work. In the years that followed, Maria's diners became an enduring legacy, a testament to the power of compassion and determination. New generations of her family took over the business, each bringing fresh ideas while staying true to the principles that had made the diners so special. Maria spent her later years writing a memoir, sharing the lessons she had learned and the stories that had shaped her. The book became a bestseller, touching the hearts of readers around the world. She often received letters from people who had been inspired by her story to start their own acts of kindness, from feeding the homeless to mentoring young people in their communities. As Maria grew older, she spent more time with her grandchildren, passing on her recipes and the values that defined her life. She found joy in watching them learn to cook, just as she had learned from her grandmother. On a quiet evening, surrounded by her family, Maria sat in her favorite chair at the original diner. She looked around at the bustling space, filled with laughter and the aroma of fresh bread and soup. It was a scene she had dreamed of many years ago, during her hardest days, and now it was her reality. Maria's heart was full. She knew that her life had been shaped by a single moment of kindness and the courage to follow her heart. And as the night settled in, she felt a deep sense of peace, knowing that her story, and the love it carried, would continue to inspire and transform lives for generations to come. Maria's story continued to ripple outwards, touching lives she would never even meet. Her diners, now a nationwide chain, were more than places to eat, they were symbols of hope and community. They stood as proof that businesses could succeed while remaining deeply rooted in compassion and kindness. Tommy and Sophia, now seasoned leaders, brought their own innovations to the family legacy. They introduced initiatives to partner with local farmers, ensuring the freshest ingredients while supporting small agricultural businesses. These partnerships became a core part of their operations, creating a sustainable ecosystem that benefited both the diners and their surrounding communities. Sophia, inspired by her grandmother's recipes and passion for cooking, developed new dishes that honored their family's heritage while appealing to modern tastes. Her creations became instant favorites, with customers eager to try her seasonal specials. Meanwhile, Tommy expanded the Plates of Hope initiative, turning it into an international effort that fed millions and empowered communities through education and employment opportunities. Maria watched her children thrive with immense pride. Though she had stepped back from the day-to-day operations, she remained the heart and soul of the diners. Her presence in the original location continued to draw customers, some of whom traveled great distances just to meet the woman who had inspired them. One day, a young woman approached Maria in the diner. She looked nervous but determined. "Mrs. Maria," she said, "I just wanted to thank you. When I was a little girl, my mom brought me here for a free meal through the Plates of Hope program. It was the first time I saw her smile in months. That meal gave us hope when we had none. Today, I'm studying to become a chef because of you." Maria's eyes filled with tears. She reached out to hold the young woman's hands. "You've already made my day, dear," she said warmly. "Your success will inspire others, just as you were inspired. That's how we keep the chain of kindness going." Stories like these became common in Maria's life. Each one reaffirmed her belief that a single act of compassion could create a ripple effect, changing countless lives. It was a lesson she never tired of sharing, whether through speaking engagements, interviews, or casual conversations with her customers. As Maria's grandchildren grew, they too became involved in the family business. They spent weekends learning to bake bread and make soup, just as their grandmother had done with Maria. They listened intently to stories about how the diners started and the values that kept them going. Maria saw in them the same spark of passion and determination that had carried her through the hardest times. One of her granddaughters, Elena, developed a particular love for storytelling. She began documenting the stories of customers who had been touched by the diners, compiling them into a blog that quickly gained a loyal following. People from all walks of life shared how the diners had played a role in their lives, from providing comfort during hard times to inspiring acts of kindness in their own communities. Elena's blog caught the attention of filmmakers, and soon Maria's story was being adapted into a documentary. The film highlighted not just Maria's journey but also the countless individuals whose lives had been changed by her actions. It showcased the power of community and the profound impact of treating every person with dignity and respect. The premiere of the documentary was a grand affair, attended by Maria's family, friends, and supporters from around the world. As Maria watched her story unfold on the screen, she was overwhelmed with emotion. She thought about her humble beginnings, the struggles she had faced, and the simple decision to help a hungry man on a rainy night. That moment had set everything into motion, creating a legacy far beyond anything she could have imagined. After the screening, Maria stood before the audience to speak. Her voice, though soft with age, carried the weight of her experiences and the strength of her conviction. "Kindness," she said, "is the most powerful ingredient we have. It can turn strangers into friends, despair into hope, and small dreams into something extraordinary. My journey started with a bowl of soup and a heart full of love. Yours can start with something just as simple. Never underestimate the power of what you can do for someone else." The room erupted in applause, and Maria was surrounded by her family as she stepped down from the stage. She knew her story would continue to inspire, carried forward by the next generation and the countless people who had been touched by her actions. In the years that followed, Maria spent her days surrounded by love and gratitude. She continued to share her wisdom with her family and community, always emphasizing the importance of compassion. Her legacy lived on in every meal served, every life changed, and every act of kindness inspired by her journey. And as she sat in her favorite booth at the original diner, watching the world she had helped create, Maria felt an overwhelming sense of peace. She had built more than a business, she had built a movement, one rooted in love, respect, and the belief that even the smallest acts of kindness could change the world.